The Lord wants all his children to partake of the eternal blessings available in his temple. He has directed what each person must do to qualify to enter his holy house. All requirements to enter the temple relate to personal holiness. To assess that readiness, each person who wants to enjoy the blessings of the temple will have 2 interviews. First, with a bishop, bishopric counselor, or branch president. Second, with a stake or mission president or one of his counselors. In those interviews, several questions will be asked. Some of those questions have recently been edited for clarity. I would like to review them for you now. Are you a full tithe payer?
One of our brethren some years ago spoke of the payment of tithing as fire insurance. Nonetheless, the word of the Lord is clear that those who do not keep the commandments and observe the laws of God shall be burned at the time of his coming. For that shall be a day of judgment, a day of sifting, a day of separating the good from the evil. I would venture a personal opinion that no event has occurred in all the history of the earth as dreadful as will be the day of the second coming, as fraught with the destructive forces of nature, as consequential for the nations of the earth, as terrible for the wicked, and as wonderful for the righteous.
This is not the Church of Emmanuel, Christ of Latter-day Saints, of Joseph Smith. This is the Church of Jesus Christ.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. Comment reply time. There's a primary children's hymn song for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that's been around since the 1800s. It's intended to be a children's lullaby to get a child to bed. And it goes like this. Jesus once was a little child like me, and he was pure and meek and mild, as a little child should be. So little children, let's you and I try to be like him. Try, or you get coal in your stocking. The modern equivalent would be socks and underwear. He played as little children play, the pleasant games of youth, and then was arrested as a glass looker for $2.86 or 68 cents. But he never got vexed if the game went wrong. And he always spoke the truth. So little children, let's you and I try to be like him. Try. Or you'll be put in the coal mine to make your own Christmas present. James R. Murray is the abusive father who came up with those lyrics. These poor children. I'm sure that's the founder of Murray City. And so, on the surface, Mormons and Christians are not offended with that. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize it was that long. Dear God. I thought it was just a quick thing. I was leading into the comment. The first comment. Comments that may be offensive are shown below. And so Mormons are not offended with this. They don't care if they put their child to work. Teaches character. But if I were to tell you that as I was singing that hymn or song in primary, I never would have known that it was actually about me. And now all of a sudden Mormons are offended. They're crying out blasphemy and burn the witch. And yet what Mormons are not comprehending and refuse to comprehend, as all Christians refuse to comprehend, they're accusing me of replacing Jesus Christ, when they replaced the Jewish Christ. Beam and mote. That which you falsely accuse in another reveals the same and worse fault in yourself. I'm able to reword that because of my knowledge that that biblical parable is true, because I have manifested it in the flesh, as I just did. As an example. And so obviously, Christians are offended if you tell them that they're wrong and that their Bible can't be proven to be literal history, and that none of the information is historical according to science. Christians get offended with that. Islam gets offended when you call them terrorists for being created by Muhammad, who did a scorched earth conversion therapy. Join or die. That's terrorism. And so, yes, Christians are offended with the Jews, claiming that the Jews murdered their Christian Jesus, when the Christians are the ones who have replaced the Jewish Christ, turned him into literal history. Because as the author of Matthew tries to do is to say that Jesus, the name of his character, as he designates it in chapter 1, rather than Emmanuel, according to prophecy, is that Jesus fulfills the prophecies. Jesus is the man like Moses, the Jewish Christ, but doesn't give him the right name, thus can't be the fulfillment of prophecy. And then there's other problems. He doesn't save the Jews. The Jews are destroyed along with their temple. And the author knew this. He wrote about it after the destruction of the temple. But nonetheless, Christians are offended. How dare the Jews murder the Christian Christ? And so Islam, likewise, is offended with the Jews in Israel. And so they started a war to exterminate the Jews, because they claim it's their land and not the Jewish land, when it's been the Jewish land from the beginning. A little hamlet called Salem, which would go on to be called the land of Judah, thus the designation of Jew. 1500 BCE. And Islam was created when? 600? Islam has no rights or claims to the land. They only have claim and rights to Saudi Arabia, where Mohammed bin Salman is the king. So why don't they go there? Are they being persecuted? Were they kicked out of their land like the Jews were? Be careful of your offenses, because it reveals your evil. So we start off with Thomas Pearson. 2024, Book of Mormon, Come Follow Me, Prophecy, Lesson number 4. Giving us the dates of the latter days. And this was flagged. And so see if you can find the offense that YouTube found. Dough, nuts, Mormons, don't you realize that these pretend prophets are just businessmen? Obviously, Mormons would be offended with that. But is he lying? Well, he's using alternate meaning of dough and nuts. But not inaccurate per se. But, yeah, the prophets are pretending. The Book of Mormon, the keystone of Mormonism, says we're the learning of the Jews, which means not Christian. But the prophets are pretending to be Christian, pretending the Book of Mormon is Christian, pretending Joseph Smith was Christian. So he's correct here. And so, yes, they are just businessmen of a corporation, the corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where Mormons are chattel. Their only purpose is to give money to the church, so that the church can hoard it for Armageddon. A multi-million-dollar industry since 1830. Oops. There, he got wrong information put in. Can you figure out why? No? Joseph Smith's church is not the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints of Brigham Young. And for some reason, Wikipedia has banned me. That's why I don't have a Wikipedia page. They have denied me logging in so that I can make comments in their comment section, as I was told by an email of a guy that works for Wikipedia, so that I can follow the discussion on whether Brigham Young was the first or the second president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As another guy then tried to friend me on LinkedIn and sent me an email saying, "You've been banned from having an email or a Wikipedia page. Pay me and I'll make it for you." But nonetheless, it's not the same church. And this is a problem that the church has been dealing with for a long time. Because when you lie and cover things up and deceive, there will always be those who will want to investigate, who will want to study, who will find evidence of the truth. And the church, before the internet, was for the most part successful in covering things up when things got exposed. But in September of 1993, 6 Mormons were studying church history. and found a rock and a hat, and a Holiness to the Lord parchment, and some other fun stuff from people's journals. And the church, rather than saying, well, it's a journal, you have to take it for a grain of salt. That's their interpretation of the religion. And so you need to look at the bigger context, and you'd find out that, oh, well, they were a Danite. No wonder they're making false accusations against Joseph. Or they were a polygamous wife. And so they were slaves to their husband and to the church, with a penalty of death if they do not support the lies and cover-ups of the church. That's all the prophets had to do. Right? Why didn't the prophets just do that? Yeah, exactly. That's the reason why they're covering it all up. And so these 6 Mormons got a lot more attention than the church wanted with their firing and excommunication. And as a result, only those in Utah learned of it, or word of mouth from those in Utah who heard about it. Outside of Utah, you would have had no clue, like me. You would have heard in that October conference of 1993, the prophets, especially, I think, Packer and maybe Ballard, and maybe some others, talking about not pursuing intelligence anymore, because that leads to apostasy. Gaining intelligence causes apostasy. Studying causes apostasy. And you would never have known that it was a response to what the church did to those September 6th. See, as I grew up in the church, learning that primary song, being told to fold your arms, close your eyes, and bow your head, and say yes, to control my childhood behavior, which you can see worked so well. It was the still small voice. And so it made sense to me when I would read Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28. We'll liken the word unto a seed. Still small voice of the Spirit. Word. And so I need to produce the results of the word in the flesh, so that I would know it is true and be able to put it back on Mormons for pulling a beam and mote on me. And so it was all about studying. The church comes out with the full quad footnoted and referenced with Bible Dictionary and Topical Guide in 1981. And so I was the first year of seminary that had these brand new scriptures. And we're using the footnotes. And the teachers were telling us to use the footnotes and to annotate and to highlight. And highlighters were introduced, and so that we could highlight our scriptures, and scripture masteries to be highlighted and referenced in the footnotes. This was an attempt by the church to have Mormons study their scriptures. And then it was all ruined in 1993 because the church set it up to be ruined. But it was set up to be ruined quicker than the church wanted. And so when I I went into the seminary teaching program, which was right after. Sure enough, I was doing it the way that I was raised to do it, studying the scriptures. And as I had been involved with the Old Testament, and it was the Old Testament when I was given a class to be tested with, I was using my knowledge, my intelligence that I had gained from my study, as the Old Testament was my specialty now, to instruct the class. But the regional supervisor in Canada, in Alberta, had pulled me aside to go over how I did, to say he would love if that was the way to do it, because he wanted to do it that way himself. But the church had given a directive down to all seminary teachers to change, to now deny and forbid studying the scriptures, to ignore the footnotes, to ignore the science behind the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Mormon, and Joseph Smith history. Now all of a sudden, it's the still small feeling that is emerging. And I was told I am now to emotionally manipulate the children and call it the Spirit, so that they feel and recognize the Spirit. No more gaining intelligence. No more studying. And here we are today. Moroni chapter 10 has been redefined. Manifesting the truth no longer means manifesting the truth. And so you need to understand that that was Joseph's way to study, to learn history, to learn the sciences, to learn translation of Greek, Hebrew, Egyptian. Not this church. They're hiding things from you. They're covering up the truth about Joseph Smith. And it's not that he was wrong, because I found out he's right. His translations are correct. The Book of Mormon and the Learning of the Jews is correct, critics. That's not what the church is covering up. The church is covering up the learning of the Jews and the intelligence that you get from it. And so as you can see, this critic has fallen prey to the church, starting with Brigham Young's trap, to make you think that they're covering up this about Joseph Smith, when in reality they're covering up that Brigham Young and his Danites had cooed and taken over and murdered Joseph Smith and turned him Christian, so that you will never know that it was supposed to be the learning of the Jews. And the church has done a good job, haven't they? So that's why they pretend to want things covered up, because they put a stop to those September 6 immediately before they would continue on to find out that it was the learning of the Jews for the Holiness to the Lord parchment and the rock in a hat, not witchcraft. So that Mormons likewise can be deceived as well. And so, President Mormon Joseph Smith, 1830 to 1844, a fake prophet. Do you see what he's done here? See what the church did to him. It's Brigham Young who's the fake prophet. But he's blaming Joseph, as the Brigham and the church wants him to do. Because Mormons, they go, no, my spiritual witness feeling says that Joseph is a prophet, therefore the church is true. Benson said that the church stands or falls on the Keystone Book of Mormon being literally history true of Jesus. Christian. Do you see the trap? Apparently not. And here comes the beam and mote. As he was and gullible people will bend over backwards if they could see him. Or, as I will throw in the beam and mote revision, and gullible people will bend over backwards so that they can criticize him and deny him. And it is not in the celestial kingdom. President Joseph Smith was an adult, not a teenager, as Mormons, as they keep saying. No, when he was arrested for glass looking on March 20th, 1826, he was 20 years old. He was a child. He was not a teenager, but what's the problem here? How can I say that? The age of an adult is 18 now, Travis. Why? Do you know why? There's an amendment in the Constitution that changed the age of an adult from 21 to 18. Back in Joseph's time, the age of an adult was 21. Joseph was not 21. He was still a child, even though he was 20. He could not buy cigarettes. He could not drink beer. Yep, that's a problem that we have in our nation. If we're going to call somebody an adult at 18, then they need the full rights of adulthood. And we're not giving it to 18-year-olds, are we? And then the debate is, well, do we need to put it back to 21? Or 50? So yes, if you're technically going to say that an adult is when they get to act like an adult, then getting a driver's license is an adult activity, which means we then have to lower the age of an adult to 15 in places like Idaho that require farm workers to be able to drive, as they employ child labor in Idaho. And here in the rest of the states too. 16-year-olds can go work at Burger King and flip burgers. Anyway, Joseph Smith and his associates wrote a fictionalized book called the Book of Mormon. So he has no clue about church history. He didn't study. He's parroting. He's puppeting the words of someone else who was wrong, who only went as far as the church allowed to be exposed with that September 6th. not having a clue what the Book of Mormon means right at the beginning of the book that says it's in the learning of the Jews. Joseph Smith had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. Critics. Yeah, I know you want to claim that the Captain Kidd books are in there. His school textbook, the Napoleon, the Late War, was in there. And the Family Bible from 1769, sorry. Errors and all are in there. That Joseph Smith just made it all up. That it's not the learning of the Jews. See, that's as far as the church will allow you to go. That Joseph Smith wrote it and made it all up. Because Mormons can still say, gift and power of God. They allow the rock and a hat. Because Mormons can say, gift and power of God. And the church gotcha. So that you never go to the learning of the Jews to find out what's really going on. The locations near Joseph Smith are a 200-mile radius in America. Miles is a long distance. Let's find out. Go to Google Maps. Because I used to do dating sites back in 2014. And you couldn't even force me to get back on them, especially since they're now pimping us out to pay them money. And then they got busted for being a sex site. Okay, so 100 miles. Wow. Utah is from east to west just under 200 miles. And so, Sidney Rigdon in Ohio is beyond the 200-mile mark. It's about 250 to 300. Vermont, it's close to 200 miles. Plus or minus. And so that was a safe number to put. Are you watching, Mormons? And take notice and learn the lie from Joseph Smith. What lie? That it wasn't within a 200-mile radius? And still, where's the offense that caused this to be flagged by YouTube? Because YouTube, they don't know the truth. They don't know that he's incorrect on his information here. So where then is the offensive words that YouTube would be justified in flagging this from me? You know, the name calling, the bad words of Christianity because they're all about idol worship, and so letters now combined into a word can be good or bad. And that saying them makes you good or bad. That's idol worship. So technically, I should be dropping the F-bombs all over the place here for Mormons. They deserve it. But YouTube is violating the Constitution and the laws pursuant thereof, embracing religion as their community standards and guidelines, which is a criminal cyber terroristic act. But anyway, the names in the Book of Mormon from Shyster Joseph Smith and Associates. You're not making any sense, dude. Because there's more to this. I don't know what you're getting to. Because it's not what critics have found. So he's not quoting critics from this. Because Charles Anthon, who Martin Harris went to New York and found him and asked him about the scribbling of Joseph Smith. And then Joseph Smith turned it on Martin Harris to say that it was the fulfillment of the Isaiah prophecy, even though that's the latter days and I've already fulfilled that. But again, Mormons are offended. And so when Martin Harris came back and told Joseph Smith that he had talked with Charles Anthon, Joseph then would go on to tell his father, and Sidney Rigdon would then be involved in this, because Sidney Rigdon's the major author of the Book of Mormon. And so yes, the names from Charles Anthon's published reprint of ancient names can be found in the Book of Mormon on purpose, not for the sake of creating a fake book. It's the learning of the Jews. And so I don't understand where you're getting these from. Lehi is in the Bible. You would expect to see Lehi in a book claiming to be of a people coming from the Bible land. But he's using some other stuff here that I can see that he's concerned of, but he doesn't say that why these are shyster names, which is a racist thing to say. I'm not really sure which race he's... I think it's Jewish, isn't it? A person, especially a lawyer, who uses unscrupulous, fraudulent, or deceptive methods in business. And so, yeah, I believe it comes from a Jewish, probably Yiddish word. But they're not saying it here for Google. What does the German word... Yeah. Well, is a slang word for someone who acts disreputable, unethical, or unscrupulous. It's referring to the Jews. And so you... It's been attached to the Jews. It has a different meaning in German. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, it's commonly associated with Jews. And here he is, clueless that Joseph Smith was doing none of this. It was Sidney Rigdon and his father who were doing it in the learning of the Jews. You see the trap that Brigham Young set, that the church keeps covering up and protecting, so the Mormons don't find out. And Mormons just match them together, Mormons. And it does not take a rocket scientist to work this one out. Dear God, the stupidity of this guy. The church makes you stupid, unintelligent. President Joseph Smith plagiarized his own country, America, to produce a lie. Amen. Joseph Smith had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. Amen. And so again, and then there's like a whole bunch of blank lines all the way down, and then there's an H. But again, I don't see, other than if YouTube is actually doing the right thing by flagging shyster. That's the only thing I can think of that YouTube would flag it for, even though the meaning technically is a German word, doesn't refer to the Jews. It's just a cultural slang that got attached to the Jews. You know, like gay for people who have, men who have intercourse in the rear with other men. Used to be happy. So, he's obviously going to be banned. He has no interest in learning from me. The Book of Mormon was the video that he was replying to. Number 4. About how it's the learning of the Jews. And he didn't give a damn to listen, to understand, to go back to number 1. To watch from the beginning. He comes to one video, it's number 4. And he's wrong. He's been lied to. And the church is purposely allowing him to believe the lie. As Mormons just say, well, gift and power of God. And yet he thought it was so important that his truth was true that he had to pull that kind of a stunt. And so that became a video in and of itself, didn't it? So I didn't get to the others or Jasmine's 2 comments. A bunch of other people that likewise are doing the same thing. See, for example, Mel Lovato, prophetic reliability or infallibility of the LDS Church. Boo! What a farce you are, Travis Wayne Gossel. Did he listen? Or is he pulling a beam and moat because of the lies that the church has made him a puppet for? A weapon. A terrorist for the church. Why did he bother to do that? Why is he not granting me my freedom of speech? My freedom of religion? You don't have freedom of speech to lie, deny, or threaten. You don't have freedom of religion to lie, deny, or threaten, or commit crime. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints lies, denies, threatens, and commits crimes. steals your money, Mel. And you're booing me? See what the church did to you. The church, by teaching wrong primary hymns, that you grow up to be further falsely indoctrinated with sacrament hymns and other hymns. You are being kept away from the learning of the Jews. And you have been made a hater. You have been turned into a weapon who attacks other people because it's not in conformity with your beliefs, which are a replacement of the Jews. And there's others that I can throw in here. I'm trying to get rid of some other stuff here. Yeah, here's Kevin Langford for number 4 also. The fact that Mormonism denies the deity of Jesus nullifies their doctrine. Did you see what he did there? He's a Christian, replacing the Jews, and therefore saying that the Jesus that replaced the Jewish Christ of Joseph Smith is also not legitimate. Just see how evil Brigham Young was. Brigham Young gotcha. He's laughing down there in hell. You don't think he's in hell? Oh, you better damn well believe he's in hell. And he's laughing. He now rules over Lucifer and over Cain. Know that doctrine? And so, yeah, this is a hateful comment by Kevin. YouTube didn't flag this one. And there's Matthew arguing over the 600,000 number, which I go over in the video about that. You didn't even bother to listen to me. So, yeah, he's saying that was quite a leap, Travis. No, it's not a leap. 60% Mormon of Utah population. I gave you the numbers. Utah population for 2021 from the census. 60% is the first number. 2 million whatever. It's too small to read. For 2021. That was when the Salt Lake Times came out and said it's 60%. Then, with the video clips, because I don't even say anything in here, I let the people reported by the news do all the talking. I just reworded their clips into a more coherent structure than what the news did. And so they're saying, no, it's more like 42. So that's what 42% would be, 1.4 million. And so the difference between the 2 point whatever and 1.4 million is around 600,000. That's where I got the number from. It's them. If they got it wrong by doing polling, because he says, so they polled 2,000 people. I didn't hear that, but most likely, if not 1,000 or 100. And 880 are LDS, and 1,120 are not, then they then apply that percentage to the church reported numbers. Yeah, I do other videos, and even around this time period talking about it further, I explain this. Poll numbers suck. Sociologists suck because poll numbers were taken from psychologists to use poll numbers. That's why Utah loves to do poll numbers. And for these people who don't seem to be Mormon, who are studying Mormonism using poll numbers, but the church would have the actual numbers. And it has this polling, we won't even call it a study, is close to what the actual truth is. Because Nelson, before this came out, and I did the video covering it because it was in the church news, changed how membership is determined. It's now called participation. And it's only when you are designated by the money of tithing you give to the church. And so you got fooled into thinking you no longer have to be a full tithe payer to be a participant in Mormonism. That's the cover story they want you to focus on. But what they're covering up is that they're weeding out the disloyal. Why would they do that? Do you not understand what Latter-day Saints means? How it's different than conservative Christianity. Not evangelicals, because they're apocalyptic too. Oh, apocalypse, yeah. That's what they're doing. And so they want to now try to encourage those who are partial tithe payers to feel like they can be more of a participant in church and thus inspire them to pay more money to the church as a reward system. And thus, they now know who's good or bad in the church, who's loyal and who's disloyal. Nelson created a naughty and nice list just in time for Christmas. That gives me an idea for the thumbnail picture. It's almost 2 now because this is almost 1 hour long. And so yes, you got to pay attention to these guys because they're false. Book of Mormon says we're supposed to be the learning of the Jews, but the church prophets are saying Christian, Jesus. That's not just lying to us. That's not even just covering things up. That is malicious in that they are committing crimes, treason, seditious conspiracy to get their kingdom back and to implement all of the abominations that Brigham Young had, who accused Joseph Smith of having and doing. That is Brigham Young's trap. And every single one of you fell for it, all around the world. And here I am, knowing of the danger you're in, trying to save your life. And this is how you treat me.